Welcome back to another episode of the Jackrabbit Illustrated Podcast. We're excited to have you join us today. Before we dive in, we'd like to thank our sponsors who help make this all possible. First off, a great big thank you to our title sponsor again for 2024, the Kubota dealers of South Dakota. Whether it's tractors, mowers, utility vehicles, construction, or farm equipment, Kubota's got you covered. With 9 convenient locations across the state of South Dakota and 1 in northwest Iowa, there's always a Kubota dealer nearby. Stop by your local Kubota dealer and see all they have to offer. All A-Team shows are sponsored this year by Culver's of Brookings and Watertown, home of the Butterburger, fried cheese curds, signature root beer, and world-famous custard. Culver's, welcome to delicious. Next, we would like to recognize the support of our other A-Team podcast sponsors. Cubby Sports Bar and Grill, the best sports bar in South Dakota and home to the Jimmy Rogers Radio Show. Northwestern Mutual Wealth Management, see them for all your retirement and life insurance needs. And the Jackrabbit Former Players Association. And now, here is the A-Team.
And we are back on another Victory Sunday here. God, that's good to say. That is so much fun to keep saying that over and over and over again. We are damn lucky, Chad.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, we are excited for tonight's show. We have the one and only Kevin Marshall from FCS Nation Radio with us tonight. And we can now call this an inaugural event, or not inaugural, an annual event.
Annual.
Last year was the inaugural. So second annual. Kevin, how the heck are you?
I'm doing very well. And I'm just very pleased that this season I got to feel what y'all felt on a Victory Sunday. You know, last year I didn't get to experience that. And this year I got to experience it 5 times.
Hey,
you know, so
pump those numbers up a couple more.
Right. I always tell people when they
playoffs.
complain about their team that walk a decade in my shoes and see how comfortable those are for you. But man, what an impressive win over Missouri State. I just, that team, I saw them when they came here to Missoula to play the Grizz, and I thought they were a pretty darn good team. The quarterback was, gave the Grizz a whole lot of problems, but the really underrated part of your team so far this year, I think, has been that defense. I mean, there's some ridiculous stat out there, like, 14 points or 13 points in the last 4 games or something like that. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And all the comparisons early on, right? Well, we're not as good as last year. I've been following this subdivision for a long, long time. There weren't many teams. Like, I could count them on maybe and do that gesture you're not supposed to do. How many teams there were that were as good as the team y'all had last year. This isn't an all-time great team, but it's a pretty damn great team you've got this year too, y'all.
Yeah. I think we realized that kind of early in the season, how special last year's team was. And even thinking back, everyone was comparing that to the 2012, 2013 NDSU team, the Marshall teams of old with Chant Pennington and Randy Moss. So, when you're in that type of rarefied air, you're pretty special.
I saw those teams several times, Matt.
Yeah.
And I mean, I saw a game there where the Citadel held the ball running the wishbone for something like 25 minutes of the first half, and the score was Marshall 42 and the Citadel 28. I mean, they only had the ball 5 minutes and scored 42 points, right? It was the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen in your life. Y'all were a lot like that team last year.
Jeepers. Sure. All right, so before we get too far into this Missouri State matchup, just got to thank our sponsors quick. Kubota Dealers of South Dakota, thank you so much for all you do. And then, with winter coming up, everyone's getting ready around here, Kevin. I'm sure they are in Montana too. If that's a tractor, a skid steer, a side-by-side with a blade, whatever it is, the Kubota Dealers of South Dakota can get you hooked up for what you need to battle the snow this time of year. So thank you, Kubota Dealers of South Dakota and the one in Iowa. Appreciate y'all, what you do. Jeepers, Kevin, you're rubbing off on me. I just dropped a y'all. Wow.
It didn't take long.
Yeah, that didn't take long.
Matt's hitting that SoCo tonight.
Yeah, right. Next up, got to thank Culver's of Brookings and Watertown. Kevin, you were somewhere that just had a Culver's. What's your order when you go to Culver's?
I was in Greenville, South Carolina, seeing my Furman mother and watching us beat Wofford. It was a great, great trip. I got the double butter burger, add bacon, tots, and the root beer that they make specially there was pretty good. It's not my favorite kind of beer, but it certainly did the job on a 76-degree day there in Greenville, South Carolina. That's for sure.
Hey, that sounds pretty good, Kevin. Next time you get back out here to Brookings, we'll have to take you to Culver's and Brookings again. I know you and Stone hit that up before, but you'll have to check it out. So
I was in a hurry, man. I actually sat in the parking lot on the trunk of the car and just, I mean, I mashed that so quickly. I'm not really even sure I got to enjoy it, but I did.
There we go. And Chad, what was that? What do you got for us?
Still suck. The Bears still suck. The Bears still suck. The Bears still suck. They really suck. Still suck.
I gotta get down to shut it off now.
The Bears still suck. The Bears.
All right.
God damn it, it's so slow.
Is that a polka? Is that what that is? Is that a polka?
That's a polka.
Technically, yeah, by the rhythm, it's a polka, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
and that
well,
one goes out to Ray and Deb Gronowski, our Bear fans that are likely listening somewhere. But today, the Bears escaped the Vikings, and yesterday the Jackrabbits put down the Bears once and for all here in the FCS. So they're done. That game yesterday, you touched on a little bit, Kevin, the pressure that Jacob Clark was under basically the whole stinking game. I don't know how that guy has such good stats because that offensive line is awful. That makes it even more impressive, the yardage he put up this year, the completion percentage he had. We held him to under 50% completion percentage, and on the year he was in the mid-70s, I believe. I don't know how, because that offensive line was awful.
It was like
Awful.
a sieve.
Yeah.
That's a lot of quick game, right? And now I'm speaking the language of my co-host Stone Lebanowitz. That's what Stone's going to have on his wedding night. He's going to be talking about quick game and skill players. So it's but yeah, just think about how good they have been without that one thing most teams really have to have, which is good guys up front.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were eligible this year and anybody was paying attention to them, because I don't believe anybody really was, because they were playing for nothing. Kind of, sort of, right? I think maybe he would have gotten some play as a Peyton Award candidate because he made a whole lot with very little. And he was an impressive quarterback. And, with Mo State moving on, I know that Brendan was there. It's one of the few places in FCS I haven't been is Plaster Stadium. And I guess now I won't have any reason to go, but I was really interested in hearing Brendan describe it on the late night with the Borg last night. When you look at it on television, it's kind of an odd looking place, right? But he said it looked like it held 25,000, but it only held 17,000. So take that for what you, but I'm kind of sad that I didn't get there, but now I have no reason to go at all.
See, Chad and I have both been there. Yeah. I liked Plaster. I thought it was very unique. Yeah.
And it's like the tale of two halves too. Like the east and west side are completely different. It's obviously that they built the east side in the 90s. It's just that it's got that look. I don't know how else to explain that, Matt, but it's a nice set of bleachers over there. They're kind of raised up. They had a tracker on it at one time, but they removed that, I think. And the old side, like Brendan pointed out, I think maybe he said that. I don't know if he said that in text to us or if he said that on the show, but they like just added more seats and they're kind of like sunk down and you're really close to the sidelines like the old Coughlin used to be, which was real nice. I'm guessing you never made it Coughlin.
No.
But yeah, I mean it's a cool looking, impressive structure on the west side, and it's nicer on the new side. And like Brendan pointed out that it kind of looked like a hog barn, a sale barn underneath, when you're going underneath. And that's true. It's got that real old school vibe, which I actually like, I like old school. So that's not a knock on it to me. It's kind of cool how they have all their concessions underneath. and instead of like most stadiums, they would face away from, the field. They're actually on the backside, and you walk like through a long corridor all the way underneath the stands. It's different, and it's cool though.
And you said Hog Barn, right? I got no problem with that. Our good friend the Rev knows that Hog is the only thing that actual barbecue is made out of.
Oh man,
I got
open
no
the door for
problem
that one, Chad.
with the Hog Barn at all. None.
Yeah, well,
Speaking of hogs,
worst sauce in barbecue land is mustard based, right? So there you go.
I mean that and vinegar. Those people up in North Carolina with their ketchup. I don't know, but that's another hour and a half we can dive into sometime in the off season and end up drinking about 14 beers and fighting each other. So
we should do that. Yeah. So speaking of hogs, 605 hogs, at least in the run game again, and the pass game for the most part, I thought, we're dominant in the run game. Felt like Amar or Angel or Kirby had what they wanted at any point in that game. Missouri State loaded the box. We were still moving the ball. I think that's why you saw Mark have a bit of a better passing game. Him and Wildy are really clicking right now. I think we're a dangerous offense at this point. So I'm happy with where we're at. Just need Lofton Nagroski, Prejean, Graham Gordon when he gets back to keep making plays is a complimentary piece for Griffin. Someone's going to take him to try to.
I think we were a few shoestring tackles away by safeties and linebackers coming back from getting a couple real big runs. I mean, there was a couple times our guys were tripped up by the ankles at 7-8 yards deep. So they were this close to breaking, because each time I was like, oh, there he goes. Oh, yep, they got him by the ankles, So, yeah, I mean, our running backs had a hell of a day.
Yeah. Only other guys, we want to get moving here with Kevin, go through the bracket. That's why he's here. But just, want to shout out some individual efforts on defense. Adam Bach was terrific. Caleb Francel was terrific. And Tucker Large was terrific. Those three, just ridiculous.
And you can't forget anybody that is a strip sack. So Jared DePriest gets a mention for me. And Hawthorne was playing a lot too, and he had got a sack, and he looked great. So shout out to
has grown, man.
Gangs. Yeah, dude, he's getting good.
Is there any truth to that rumor that Bach wanted to dip out early in the game last week because he heard that Labanowitz was looking for him?
Yeah. he was rubbing his sternum to make sure it was good and calloused for when he put his helmet into his sternum and ran through him like
Stone. Gosh. That was ridiculous.
I like it though.
Yeah. Just gotta say thank you to Cubbies, Sports Bar and Grill Brookings, for their sponsorship. I know Kevin will talk about this in a little bit, but they were involved in the Alex's Lemonade stand with Mark and the fundraising event there. Cubbies is a huge supporter of us as well. Last year they did the JI Italian nachos, brought them back and put $1 towards every sale for that. That was awesome to see. But just everything they do for Jackrabbit fans. It's a great place to watch the games. Tons of TVs, great food, great drink, anything that you could want in a sports bar. And it's great for families too. So thank you, Cubbies of Brookings, for all you do. So then with that, we'll do game balls. And so for rants and raves on offense, I went with Mark. Chad, any thoughts from you?
Game balls on offense?
Yes.
I think I have to certainly mention how good GFW, Griffin Frickin' Wildy was.
Yep.
He's coming along this season, doing real well. But for me, the game ball goes to 4-4. Kevin Brenner, the stupid awesome catch that he had that kind of turned things on for our offense at that point. We really stepped up the heat after that. He had some really good plays. So I give it to Kevin Brenner. That's who gets it from me.
I like that, Chad. That's a good one. Defensively, there's a lot that could go around. I just felt like when I was watching the game, it felt like Caleb Francel was everywhere. So I ended up giving it to Caleb. And you could go with Bach, you could go with Tucker Large, you could go with the Chain Gang. I would not be upset in any direction that you wanted to go with that. Who would you give it to, though?
Well, I'm not going to go with the Chain Gang because choosing a position group is a cop-out. But Tucker Large definitely made a lot of sense because he was great on the PBUs. He was everywhere. We talked about we had Hawthorne in there with the sack that kind of really started it off for the defense. But anytime you get a strip sack and you're the only one that gets a strip sack and we get the ball back, you're getting my player of the game. So, Mr. Jared DePriest, congrats, sir. You did a hell of a job.
All right. Special teams just went with Dustman. And so
I'm going to go with Caden Olivier because he's been delivering the ball well all season.
There we go. All right. And score prediction, none of us were super close. So that one's not going to matter.
We gave him much too much credit, but we did that on purpose, did we not?
Yep. All right. Chad, you want to talk about Northwestern Mutual, and do you want to just do a lemonade stand, Alex's lemonade stand update for today? Perfect.
Yeah, let's go right now. Northwestern Mutual is your one stop for all things financial services. They can hook you up with financial planning. They can hook you up with legacy planning for estates. They do it all. I also do insurance, so look to them for any life insurance needs. They're the sponsor here of the FCS Nation Radio deal with Alex's lemonade stand. We got the standings pulled up. I don't know if you want to talk about that, put you on the spot a little bit, Kevin, or give you a second while you cough it out. But
sure, it's good, man. I'm fine.
I know today that Northwestern Mutual is matching up to $10,000 in total donations made today for all the athletes. And also on top of that, Chris Schenkel put up a match for, I think it was $2,500, right? For each Mark and Aiden Bauman. So that, excuse me, and I got the burps, could be a total of another $5,000 there. And looks like Mark really jumped up because wasn't he at the maybe flirting with $6,000 range before today?
Yep. I think it was
Jim will correct me in the comments, that's for sure.
Right. And look, all it took was Javante Graves-Billets from the Big Blue Machine to sort of, I mean, you feel that hot breath from that bulldog on Mark's shoulder, being only down by about $1,400. And boy, Jackrabbit Nation surely stepped up. Being at 29,257, we were at about 22,000 this morning. So, I mean, that's an impressive haul so far. We'd like to use all of that $10,000. And, if we can, that'd be perfect. Chris Schenkel, like you said, putting some pot sweetener on top of that was really cool. And I would be remiss if we're going down the list there. And I mean, look who's bringing up the rear in dead last place. That would be our friends, the Furples. And, don't quite know how to feel about that. I did spend 4 hours in their facility when I was down there seeing my mother as they were getting ready to play Mercer, doing lemon top pictures. So I imagine they're doing better than that, but they kind of lag behind with the lemon top pictures. But I just want to see the cream of the SoCon and sort of the other part of the SoCon there. And I'm surprised that nobody's asked me about it yet. But we haven't really got to the bracket yet. And I was self-flatulating out there earlier with the with only one SoCon team in there this year. But, it is what it is. And
you just got to learn not to drop those bad games like we did, 6-7 years ago, eight years ago, I guess, really.
Yeah. And, we just have to add, 7 more teams to our league so we can do what the CAA does. So
no doubt. What a joke.
The CAA has really become a joke since JMU left, but
that's a good segue, Kevin, for our first game there. We brought you in as our national expert here just to kind of look at the games like we did last year. You provide such a good overview of some of these teams and your interaction and following of them throughout the year, where Chad and I tend to focus more on the Valley. So let's just start right at the top there. UT Martin and New Hampshire. The winner will go to play Montana State. So UT Martin and New Hampshire. What do we need to know? Who do we need to watch in this one?
UT Martin has a defensive line that is really, really good. It's kept them in a lot of football games. The back part of their secondary is a little suspect, but they can get to the quarterback with 4 guys. And that has really separated them this year in a conference where there aren't but maybe 1 or 2 more teams that have guys up front like they do. The defensive line coach is Rudy Griffin, who's a friend of mine. We went to the Citadel together, and Rudy played 3 years at the Citadel and then transferred to Alabama and won a national championship. So, that he's a pretty darn good football player, Rudy was. But he's a hell of a coach, too. He was at Northern Arizona the last few years before that staff got fired. But New Hampshire is a typical CAA team in that they are big up front. Most CAA teams are. And whether those guys are very athletic or not is what really is the cream of the crop for a CAA team, if they are good or if they're not. They're all big, but can they play is the question. New Hampshire was really under the radar most of the season. Most of the attention went rightfully to Richmond and to Villanova, and as of late, Rhode Island and Stony Brook. But New Hampshire was kind of waiting there in the weeds for one of those teams to kind of slip up, and they did. And New Hampshire was able to claim that spot in the playoffs. That'll be a very interesting game. I don't think either of those 2 squads will present too much of a problem to Montana State, mostly because Montana State, they've already shown they have a lot of depth this year, which was a problem for them in the past. They're playing a lot of their second guys now on the defense, and they're rotating in guys who were 3rd on the depth chart in fall camp and coming into the season. So they've got a lot of experience now too. So it's kind of like that point in the year where nobody's a freshman anymore, right? Well, nobody is a 3rd team guy anymore. Everybody's pretty much playing. So I would expect Montana State to move on from there relatively easily, but that's why you play the games, right? I mean, the ball doesn't always bounce your way. Sometimes it bounces your way the entire season. Look at what Mercer has done. I mean, so we'll get to them in a little bit, but sometimes the ball doesn't bounce your way. They could give Montana State a game, but some things would have to go their way for both of them to come out of Bozeman with a victory. A lot of things would have to go their way.
Yeah, you may bring up a really good point with the CAA offensive lines. That's something I've noticed about Delaware and New Hampshire and even Villanova in some ways when we've played them in the past. They bring out these massive offensive lines, but man, they just can't move. And some of our defensive lines' best games have happened because of those CAA offensive lines. So that's going to be interesting. The New Hampshire, I just don't know much about their defense. You think Montana State's going to be able to just run through them potentially if that's the matchup?
Yeah, they haven't seen a team like Montana State. There aren't a lot of teams that have, to be frank with you.
No.
They basically run what is an old school triple option attack out of the shotgun. A lot of the same principles. And like we've discussed on our show, and I know y'all have touched on it a little bit too, the first 7 or 8 weeks of the season, Montana State really limited what Tommy Mellott was doing running the football because they knew that if he got hurt, that the backup is not Sean Chambers this year, right? A guy who does a lot of the same things that Mellott could do and was maybe a little bit better passer. The backup this year is a great big old like prototypical drop back passer guy. So, if Mellott was to go down, their season was going to be in the toilet with a quickness. So, they really, you could tell that it was still in there, but they weren't really unleashing that. And they have the last couple of weeks, and you've seen what their whole offense looks like, and it's been impressive. But we all know this time of the year that, a great defense is going to be an advantage in these playoffs. It always is, a defense and a running game. Well, Montana State seems to have both of those, but it's really interesting to me that they've been able to replace offensive linemen at the rate that they have had to and have been able to. So, that's a very, very good Montana State team. People will say, well, how do we know? They haven't really played, a schedule that is comparable to others. But, I mean, when they handled UC Davis the way they did up until the last 5 minutes of that football game, that showed me a lot. And I think this Montana State team is a team that can hoist that trophy in Frisco. I really believe that. And I don't know if they will, but it's not inconceivable.
Yeah. All right. Move on to the next game. Lehigh. Oh, sorry, Chad.
No, I was just going to say about the Montana State comment. I did kind of run the averages of how total defense and total offense of the opponents averaged out for the top 4 seeds. And definitely Montana State has the edge on total offenses, but they're quite a ways back on the total defense average of opponents. So it's kind of interesting, fun thing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Next up, we have Lehigh versus Richmond, winner facing Idaho. And Lehigh this year took the Patriot League, took it from Holy Cross, who'd been dominant there recently, with all of their graduations and Bob Chesney moving on and stuff. That kind of left Holy Cross a bit down this year. Not terrible. But Richmond versus Lehigh. Richmond should take this one, right, Kev?
Yes, I think so. Richmond's won 10 games in a row. Right. So, I mean, that's not easy to do. And y'all know that. And Lehigh, they're more of what you would see out of the Patriot League when it wasn't Holy Cross winning it. Right. Holy Cross did not look like a Patriot League team.
No.
When they got off the bus there in Brookings, South Dakota, you're like, this does not look like Bucknell. Right.
Yep.
You know, it just didn't. But Lehigh is more of your prototypical what you expect out of a Patriot League team. Now, they do have some speed on the outside. They have some skill guys who are pretty darn good. But I believe that Richmond should be able to lock those guys up. The Richmond quarterback has been, well, they don't ask him to do a whole lot. They have a good running game. The defense has been pretty darn good. And Richmond reminds me a lot of the way Furman played football last year. They were a really, really good team, but they never really blew people out. They would win 28-14. And you're like, wow, you should have beat that team a lot worse than that. But then they won a lot of games 28-14, right? That was just the way that they played. And Richmond has a lot of that. Richmond is a team that I think probably should not be playing this first weekend. You know, when you talk about who got seeded, I would have flipped those around, but, you know, they don't ask me. So I think Richmond is a team that deserved a bye. They won the CAA. They beat Delaware, and they beat Delaware when Delaware still had one of their top 3 quarterbacks, which that was a problem for the Blue Hens this year. And Richmond is a team that's going to give some people some problems. That Lehigh team is probably a 30-17 type ball game, something like that. And people will say, wow, you beat the Patriot League champion 30-17. That's not all that impressive. But then you'll come back to this and go, wow, they beat a lot of people 30-17. So that's just the type of ball game I expect there.
Sure. So the Kibbe Dome is going to be rocking between Idaho and Richmond, likely, is what I'm hearing.
Yes. And so when I'm weighing where I might go, right, on that second weekend, there's like one fewer pass to go to Kibbe Dome than there is to go to Bozeman, right? Even though Idaho is a little further. But I'm thinking that I might go over there if the weather isn't bad. But if it's bad, I'll just stay home. But I like that environment over there. It's those people care about football, and you can tell. And that sentiment of, well, we're FCS, we're not FBS anymore, that's kind of gone by the wayside with some success. Mm-hmm. When they were failing in FCS the same way they were in FBS, I got it. But it's amazing the job Jason Eck has done there in a short time. I know that he has a special place in the hearts of Jackrabbit fans. I mean, and, you know, sometimes you would go, wow, why did you do that, Coach Eck? Why are we running a quadruple pass, right? Yep. Or whatever it is. But, I mean, but I tweeted this out during the Idaho game last week. You can't call them gimmick plays when you run several of them every week. Right. It's not a gimmick. That's just what you do.
Part of your offense. Right.
Right. But we know that guy wants to line up and run it right at you too. So
right.
I just been very impressed with the job Jason Eck has done out there for the Vandals.
Yep.
It's kind of interesting to take a seat back and know that the top 4 seeds all have coaches from the NDSU, SDSU lineage, kind of
know what to expect.
spurring their growth and success. So
Yeah. And Kev, if you go out to the Idaho game too, I bet you Chris Hammond would buy you a beer at the Corner Club too.
Man,
So,
I'll tell you what, Chris Hammond, we went there after the Montana game last season, and the line was out the door. And Chris said, "Watch this," and he disappeared, and then he came back.
He's shorter than you.
And then he came back holding like an armload of beers. And I swear, I think he just low crawled underneath all the people, or maybe just turned over since it's Chris Hammond, right? He didn't have to low crawl, but and he comes, and I don't know how he did it. I have no idea, but I'm not going to lie and say it wasn't one of the more impressive things I've ever seen from a diminutive gentleman in my life. So
there we go. That's awesome. All right, next game. SEMO is hosting number 12 Illinois State. And the winner will take on
making fun of my lamp.
Yeah.
Adam Harm's making fun of my lamp, man. That lamp's got buffalo and it's got arrowheads on it. That's a Montana lamp, Adam. You don't know what that is, dude.
Yeah. SEMO is
I think he's talking about he can't see your face because it's
well, that might be by design.
lit.
You know, people don't move to small town Montana just on their own because they love FCS and want to show.
They usually do it because they want to wear hoodies and send letters.
That and I may be in the witness protection program. One never knows.
Oh gosh. Yes, Kyle, we will.
Kyle, of course.
Yes, of course. That's why we're here. All right. SEMO hosting Illinois State. As you've all probably heard, Illinois State, their campus is hosting the Illinois State Championships for football. Their stadium is unavailable. So even though they are the 12th seed, they're having to travel to SEMO to play a team that is really stumbling into the playoffs and not looking so good. What do you expect out of this one with the winner going to face UC Davis?
I have not been high on Illinois State. I love Brock Spack. Guy's got the best mustache since Selleck. There's a lot to love about a program led by that guy. But when you look at this is a common theme with a lot of the teams in the playoffs this year. When you look at who they've beat, it's not like, wow, right? And so I thought North Dakota would go out there and beat them last week. I thought North Dakota had to win a road game at some point. That if you're involved in something enough times, that the law of averages would say that it can't go this way every time. Like, I mean, even the Atlanta Braves won the one World Series.
Yep.
Right. You know, they were in the playoffs 14 times. Maybe 14 is the magic number for North Dakota.
But you don't put money on the fighting who's.
No, you don't. No, you don't. No,
when they're out of their own dome.
That's true. Don't. And maybe this is about as far as Bubba Schweiger can take them.
I think so.
I mean, maybe this is
no. We want Bubba to stick around. He's good for our league.
Right. But Illinois State, I mean, they do some things that are really good. The running back is outstanding. You know, rushed for 1,000 yards. He went over 1,000 yards last Saturday. They do some things. The defense they've improved as the season has gone along. But you watch them play Youngstown, who stunk out loud, right? And to see the improvement in that team from then, this is a team that's gotten better every week. And as long as they keep playing, they're going to keep getting better. So, you know, this is a game where, I don't know, I would have to say, Chad, what do you think? Because I know what I think, but that might be just my own bias. What do you think? What's going to happen here?
I mean, I think the home team takes it.
Even though they're not at home.
No, the home
SEMO is. Yeah, SEMO takes
it. Right. But, I mean, they should be, right? But SEMO has really struggled, and that's puzzling because Paxton DeLaurent can spin it.
Dude, he's a stud.
It seems like he's been their quarterback for like 14 or 15 years, right? I mean, he can really spin it, but the skill guys aren't as good as SEMO has had in the last 2-3 seasons with him at the helm. And that's shown. Their defense hasn't been terrible. But when you look at SEMO, and I think if the defensive coordinator was told the offensive coordinator, we're going to give up 17, 20 points, SEMO would feel like, well, we're going to win every game then, right? Yep. And that just hasn't really happened. Yep. And we kept waiting for them to turn it on. Now, he had some games Paxton did early in the season that were really impressive. He was our National Player of the Week a couple times.
Yep.
But that's not the same team it was in October. It's just not. If I knew what was wrong with them, they would have already called me, and I could tell Coach Tuke, here's what's the matter. But they're trying to get it fixed. But I don't know what to tell you about SEMO. They're stumbling isn't the word. There's got to be something worse than that. To talk about how they're playing now as they're coming into this thing.
Well, just think 3 weeks ago, there was discussion about them, being a top 8 seed.
Absolutely.
And now they're all the way unseeded. And Kevin, you are absolutely right. One of my favorite early season games was SEMO versus Southern Illinois, right? When Southern Illinois was healthy. That was a heck of a game. And so just for that program just to fall off the way it has this as the season's gone along here in November, that's got to be disappointing for those folks. So, all right, Kyle, hopefully you're still here. Drake,
getting to the good stuff here,
is traveling to Tarleton State, who we hope gets flat tires and never wins another game.
Because screw those guys.
Yeah, screw the teams that cancel on us and make us play D2 schools. So go Drake in this one. The winner takes on South Dakota USD. So
let's hope Utah Tech and Tarleton State never get another W.
Yeah. Kevin, what do we need to know about Tarleton, though, in all seriousness?
I'm just really enjoying the narrative switch from the happy, warm, fuzzy feelings about playing your neighbors there in that football game, how it was great for everybody and everybody won, and how families were brought together, to now to hell with those guys. We didn't want to play them anyway. But
I mean,
we made the best out of a bad situation, Kevin.
Let's be honest. If we play another D1 team, like we should have,
we don't know.
Utah Tech, we don't know, but we have a better shot at that 2 seed than we did playing Augustana, right?
Yes,
I mean, we have more of an argument. One of the main reasons it fell the way it did is because we had one less D1 win. Same thing. You go down the next rung. That's USD. They have one less too. So, they kind of got hosed by the whooping cough and people that don't believe in vaccinating their children, but that is what it is.
Well, I know this, that if anybody is going to talk bad about Drake on the JI show, it's not going to be me, because I've been warned by a fellow whose name is Ray, who's got a really lovely wife named Debbie, and a boy named Mark. That I was told that in a tailgate lot in Hammond, Louisiana, and I tend to believe everything I hear in tailgate lots in Hammond, Louisiana. But I mean, this will be what you think it's going to be, right? Drake is a little better than most Pioneer League champions are. I mean, they went on the road and won at Eastern Washington, and we have a playoff team who's hanging their hat on the victory that they just had over Eastern Washington yesterday. I'm talking about Northern Arizona. Man, we beat them, but they lost to Drake. So, this will be what you think it is. Play for 3 quarters and get your starters out of there and move along to the next week.
Yeah. So, Jim, just to address this, like SDSU does pay. Like Utah Tech had to pay SDSU $200,000 like to cancel the game.
Almost $250,000.
I mean, that's great, but I mean, when they cancel within a year and are willing to pay that, like what do you do? Screw them. Like, it's hard enough to get teams to Brookings. The travel is difficult to get here.
I mean, you could dial up Mercyhurst like Montana State did,
right? So,
you got to give the Montana schools credit. You got to give the Montana schools credit in that if you're even thinking of transitioning to D1, they're going to put you on the schedule, right? It's because by the time the game comes, you might be D1, right? Yep. So, I mean, I've watched North Alabama come through here. I watched East Tennessee State when they first restarted the program come through here. It's give them credit. They I don't know what the AD does. He must have like a red phone in his office, that thinking about D1, right? thinking about D1, and he's put him on the schedule then. So, but that's just kind of how that goes down. But I have heard from people in the athletic department at SoCon schools that there are schools in the Big Sky and the Missouri Valley that, as we would say, will tote the mail for you to come out there and play them. And, still there aren't a lot of takers to come out there and, have happen to you what's probably going to happen to you in a lot of those situations.
Yep.
I think UT Tech had to do that on purpose when they were Dixie State, just because were they not affiliated with a conference at first or something? They had something funky that they had to schedule those.
Well, they need the money,
really tough.
right?
Yeah, well, that's what it was. That's what it was. They need money.
Yeah.
And
all right.
And so what happens here? South Dakota gets either Drake, who they won't.
They get to play
Tarleton. Yeah. Good for Tarleton. They get to play indoors, so they don't have to deal with real weather. There's about 0% chance they beat USD. USD coasts on
zero.
About zero.
I don't know. I have seen some teams that we've thought are really, 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 really good in Vermilion, South Dakota, play some stinkers, even in their own building. So, Tarleton's going to bring what every Southern team says, a very athletic group, right? A very athletic group. And Kayvon Britton, their running back, could play for just about anybody. The quarterback is not terrible. They have some pieces at Tarleton. If they can, get past Drake, they'll present some problems to South Dakota. Not a whole lot, but they'll do some things that will give the Yotes some difficulties, I think.
Oh, I'm not denying their players. The problem is they're going to have to get past that defensive line. And as we all know well, USD has maybe the second best team defense in the Valley. So they haven't faced anything quite like that. So they're really going to have to scheme it up. And hey, if they beat them, they'll be my second favorite team in the playoffs. Let's just put it that way.
Hey, and looking down the road, I am excited for that Lan Larison versus that USD defense. Like, that's going to be a fun matchup. So I really like him as a player. He's a heck of a player. So that's down the road, though. We'll get into that later. All right. Scroll on down, Chad. All right. Next up.
Back up to show that.
Yeah. Tennessee State versus Montana, with the winner coming to Brookings. So what do we need to know, Kevin? What's going on with Montana?
Well, just imagine if Logan Fife
quarterback
had shoved Bobby Houck in week 2, right? If that's all it took, there are people who would line up to shove Bobby Houck, I think, right? That they could auction that off at the Grizzly scholarship auction, probably, and do really well. But this Tennessee State team intrigues me. Just like Tarleton, they got a lot of dudes, and they have a defensive line that's pretty darn good. And the secondary, we saw them get torched in the Fargo Dome, right? But I think that was kind of when we all knew that Cam Miller was on one, right, for this entire season. Yep. But that's a pretty good football team. Eddie George, not going to let them be intimidated by Washington Grizzly Stadium. Depending upon the forecast, Nashville is not, as far as southern cities go, it ain't Charleston or it ain't Savannah or New Orleans with the climate, right? It does get pretty chilly up there. Tennessee State will come in, and this one really intrigues me because I don't know what to expect, because it's really hard to picture those two teams playing, right? Yeah. I didn't have in my mind what will happen if Tennessee State and Montana get matched up. I've seen the Grizz a lot this year. I've seen them look really good. I've seen them look really bad, and I've seen them look ugly, to be quite frank with you. I think this one's going to have a lot more to do with how the Grizzlies play versus what Tennessee State's going to bring. If they come in and turn the ball over, aren't efficient on the offensive side of the ball, and make some mistakes in the special teams, they're going to get beat by Tennessee State. This is not going to be a 52-3 job. Tennessee State is a competent football team. They're well led, and they believe in themselves. And in the playoffs, that is a hard, that's a pretty good combination and a recipe for success. Their quarterback, Ellis, had a lot of good years at Austin Peay. Before this is his second year at Tennessee State. He's a gunslinger. He's tough. He's mobile. He can run with the ball. If Tennessee State can run the football at all and keep the Grizz off of him, this will be a 4-quarter ball game that could go either way.
Yep. That was going to be my question is, we've seen teams get up on Montana a lot this season, and Montana comes storming back. Is Tennessee State going to be one of those type of teams that maybe can hang on to that lead and grind out a victory if they have to against these guys?
I think so, because they can run the football. And even if they have to punt, they're probably going to grind out on 3 running plays a first down. So even if you get them with an incompletion and get them behind the chains, even if they have to punt, it's going to be, after 6 plays versus after 3. And that clock just keeps them moving. And that's their game plan, I would think. Run the ball, possess the ball, keep the Grizz offense on the sideline, and try to take the crowd out of it. We'll see what kind of crowd Montana gets for a first-round playoff game at home. I imagine it'll be somewhere 15,000 is what they usually average for these first-round games, 15, 14, 13. And so that place with that many people in it isn't nearly as intimidating. But they've had some advantages lately when they have played at this time of the year at home with the weather. Last year against Delaware, once that snow started flying, you could tell that Delaware was they had no more interest in being outside and playing that game.
Yeah.
So if it's a 45-degree day and sunny, that's nothing that Tennessee State isn't going to be used to playing in already.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
Well, I looked at our weather here for next weekend. It's supposed to be 15 degrees and windy. So
awesome.
Going to be plenty cold.
I was just going to point out how much is them getting down and storming back a function of them trying to make IATA a thing and having Fife come in and mop up whatever mess was left behind. I mean, it seemed early in the year that he was the better quarterback, and for some reason, I don't know if he's got pictures of Houck with a co-ed or something, but they kept putting him in and running him first. And I'm not saying he's not a good athlete. It just appears that Fife is the better candidate there. And it seems like you said, that they settled in on that. But look at how they ended up playing against the Grizzlies. I mean, based off that result, when they come to South Dakota State, Jimmy Rogers, I hope you remember what happened when you were out in Montana, because we owe them some points.
Yes, you do. And I will say this in the defense of the Montana coaching staff. One of the loudest shouts by Grizz supporters is the yearly transfer starting quarterback. So I mean, you can't please some people, right? I mean, my grandmama used to say they wouldn't be happy in heaven, right? So I'm trying to develop this kid. He's got to play if he's going to be the next guy. Well, why are you playing him? He's not as good. It's what do you do? So
no win situation, yeah.
Right. And I just think that was something to it. But then he was so defensive about, well, is there any rhyme or reason to it? He's like, nope, just don't feel.
Huh.
I'd rather him just said none of your business. It's analytics, and just move
I'm
on,
the coach.
right?
I make the decisions.
Right.
It's true at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yes.
All right. So, like I said, these two will be coming to SDSU the second round there. 1:00 kickoff in Brookings. Tickets are available now. Lots of $10 tickets. So, I mean, it's awesome. Awesome promotion to get butts in the seats. And then students, if you're listening, free admissions for you. Barry Dunn, President Dunn, is covering your ticket cost. So that's awesome. So no excuse on that front. Get there. On the other side there, we have Eastern Kentucky at Villanova, and the winner will go on to meet Incarnate Word, who we saw earlier this season. Eastern Kentucky, kind of a new kid on the block here, at least in our eyes, for these playoffs. What do we need to know about that matchup, Kevin?
That's a proud program.
Yeah.
Eastern Kentucky was, and this is no put down to y'all, but they were in 1AA playoffs when y'all were D2, right?
Yep.
So I mean, this is a proud program. Roy Kidd led that program to a lot of lofty heights, and they fell on some hard times. I mean, the head coach Walt Wells almost died last year, right? He had a heart attack in his office.
Right. That's
and,
right.
But this football team, they replaced a lot on the offensive side of the ball, a all-time program type quarterback. And they just couldn't seem to get over the hump the last couple of years. Missed a field goal that would have beat Western Carolina last season. That probably would have given them a springboard into the playoffs. They just couldn't make that one play that kind of program defining play. And this year they made those. They started off rather slowly, but they, like Illinois State, has gotten better each week. And this Colonels team is a pretty darn good football team. I think that, I'll say this, Incarnate Word does not want Eastern Kentucky to win, because Eastern Kentucky plays a different brand of football than they're used to seeing in the South. And that is that they're going to line up and run it right at you with a big old offensive line and dare you to put 8 guys in the box to try to stop it, because they have enough guys on the outside where they can hurt you. So
Interesting.
I would not be rooting for Eastern Kentucky if I was that bunch at Incarnate Word. That's for sure.
Yeah. And Villanova, I think at the start of the season, they've just been an interesting program, because we thought that outside of the Valley and the Big Sky, that Villanova was the team that maybe had the best chance to win a national championship. And they've just kind of sleptwalked through the season.
Yeah.
You know, they're still 9-3, but honestly, the times I've watched them, they just have not been that impressive. I've been trying to figure out what the heck's going on, because they brought back a ton of dudes. So I don't understand.
Towson missed 4 field goals that would have, like 4 game-winning field goals against Villanova, right? And I mean, that it was just a comedy of errors for the special teams for Towson that day. But I like Connor Watkins, I really do, and they have some pieces, and you know, we kept waiting, and Stone and I kept talking about it. We want to have Watkins on the Stone Cold QB segment, but he never had a week where it was warranted, like all season, you know. And it's just, I don't know. I've started thinking that maybe that, you know, the phrase paper tiger was invented for teams like Villanova.
Sure.
You know, they benefited from the schedule in the CAA, like all the teams who were in the playoffs from the CAA did. And so how good are they? Well, and then when you think back to last season and that playoff game against y'all, how much did that wind and that affect everybody? That could a bad team have come in there and had been competitive that day because of the conditions?
That's
maybe,
very true.
maybe,
Yeah.
Potentially.
So, but I don't blame you or me or Labanowitz or the B team guys for thinking that, because, you know, there were very few teams that stood up to you last season, right? And Villanova was one of them. And so I kind of had the same thoughts y'all did coming into the season, but they just haven't looked like a team that should be ranked in the top 10 like they were most of the season. There was nothing about their play on the field that screamed top 10 team to me.
Yep. Big win a month ago over New Hampshire, right? A 14-6 win. But that's probably their marquee win on the season.
Beat Delaware, wasn't a big win at the time. And that wasn't a big win at the time, right? I mean, New Hampshire has come on as of late, right? That wasn't a big win at the time.
Sure.
And it was just somebody who they were supposed to beat. And you looked at it and you went, well, they won 14-6. Real offensive juggernaut. That.
Yeah. Right.
Well, sometimes you have 2 really good defenses, and
True.
You know, like the marker game. So I know that wasn't the case, but just because the offense doesn't score a lot. Anyway.
Yeah, nobody was thinking that was like the marker game, guys. So
that's
I mean,
that's fair.
nobody was gonna mistake the New Hampshire Villanova game for the marker game. I promise you that.
All right. So next up, Rhode Island versus Central Connecticut State. Duquesne really choked this week and lost to Central Connecticut, and now we're left here. Rhode Island finally put together a pretty good season. We've thought Rhode Island, I think the last, half dozen years was on the verge of something, and then they would have one of those games where they trip up and they kind of snowballed and they'd end up missing the playoffs. This year they finished 10-2. Pretty balanced team. So I'm thinking Rhode Island's going to move on and face Mercer, right? I think we can all kind of think that. What do we need to know about Rhode Island, Kevin?
Well, I don't know about y'all, but if somebody had already hoisted the trophy for conference champions and they beat the team that you didn't beat, and the conference came to you and said, hey, we're going to give you a trophy too. I don't know, man. You know, that would kind of rub me the wrong way, right? But this Rhode Island team won't have any problems with Central Connecticut State. we see these games between CAA teams and NEC teams just about every year in the non-conference, because so we kind of know what to expect here. But poor Duquesne, I mean, they had the look of maybe a team that was so not prototypical of their conference that they were almost Holy Cross-like, right? That they had, but then, football's a funny game. You got to play every team and play every opponent. And Central Connecticut State was better than them yesterday, right? I mean, if they play 10 times, I bet Duquesne wins 9, right? But on that Saturday, they didn't. And it's got to really stink for them, because I think that Duquesne team is a team that would have had a shot to be one of the smaller conferences to maybe win a game in the playoffs. So Duquesne and Rhode Island would have been a much more entertaining game than Central Connecticut State and Rhode Island's going to be.
Yep. And in defense here, Rhode Island's not playing great here to end the season. They lost to Delaware. They did not look good against Albany, only winning by 3 points on that one. And then they were down for much of the game against Bryant and ended up winning by 14. But, I mean, they're not playing their best ball coming into the playoffs like they were maybe mid-season.
I know this. There's not anybody in this country who's lining up to play Monmouth right now, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you talk about teams that have stumbled into the playoffs and teams who found themselves the last weekend of September and have been good towards the end. I mean, that Monmouth team, nobody wants to play them right now. But you know what? Turn-in day for Monmouth is tomorrow. They dug themselves too big of a hole.
Yep, that's good.
Turn in your stuff. We'll see you in the spring, right?
Yep. Hey, one question on Mercer, Kev, before we move on. How did they rebuild on the fly this year when they lost so much to the portal and to graduation last year and a new head coach, right?
Right. Mercer did some things. And look, it's an interesting school, right? The facilities are all there, right? You go into Mercer and you go into some other SoCon schools, and it's like night and day. Everything is new there because they're a new program in the scheme of things with others in that old league, right?
Yep.
And Mike Jacobs came in, and it's funny because the new head coaches in the SoCon had 2 really different ideas on how to take over a program. Trey Lamb takes over East Tennessee State, and anybody who wasn't probably going to start for him when he looked at their film, well, they went and played elsewhere this season, and he brought a whole bunch of guys from Gardner-Webb with him where he was at before.
Yes, he did.
Yep.
And Mike Jacobs didn't do that. Of course, it's easier to do that when you're going D1 to D1 versus going from Lenore-Rhine to Mercer, right?
Right.
Sure.
But Mercer was able to do some very good things in the transfer portal. And I think that they were also able to – that a lot of these kids committed to Mercer and not to the former head coach. The true freshman quarterback who has played a lot this year, this is a guy who, if they can keep him, which is a thing we have at this level, right? A problem we have at this level. If they can keep him, he's going to win a Peyton Award. It's going to happen. He has been that good filling in for a guy who, they basically handed the reins to.
Yep.
But Mercer has had a season where every bounce that could have gone their way has gone their way. I tweeted during their game on Saturday that now I have seen Mercer score a touchdown this season in every way possible. Whenever they have needed something to happen for them, it has happened except for the first 6 minutes at Sanford. That's it. I mean, the Citadel was driving in week 3 to take the lead over Mercer right before half and fumbled the ball on the 1-yard line, and Mercer recovered it. So I think when they've needed that, those things have happened. And to have a special kind of a season, sometimes all of those things happen. In other years, you can't get a turnover for nothing, right?
Yep.
But that's what Mercer's done. They have a lot of good athletes, and they've taken advantage of every sliver of an opportunity that's been given to them. And good teams do that.
Yep. All right, our final game to talk about: Northern Arizona versus Abilene Christian, both 8-4. Kind of an interesting game here. What do we need to know about these two?
Abilene Christian's quarterback can really spin it. So can Northern Arizona. I expect this one. This one has shootout written all over it, which means it'll be 17-16, right? And so that's just kind of just a tendency. Those things have a tendency to happen. But I just think about our good friend the Rev, and man, if they could have found a way to win an ugly game against Incarnate Word 2 weeks ago, and then same type of ball game was Abilene Christian on Saturday. Yep. What would we be talking about right now? But this team the offense has really been there, but as the season's gone along, I don't know whether the opponents have gotten better or whether people have just schemed them better. But, they're not throwing for 450 anymore, right? Sure. And, they're going to need that passing game to be there. And Northern Arizona, they pulled out everything last week. Flea flickers against Eastern Washington. You could tell how much being in the playoffs meant to them because they ran everything they could, and they were able to get out of their dome with a win over Eastern Washington. So, these are two teams. And look, sometimes the best games in these playoffs are in this round when the teams maybe aren't the best teams and everybody knows it. And maybe even they know it, right? But, they sit there in the middle of the ring like two heavyweights and just swing at each other right in the face for 4 quarters. Yeah. I expect this game to be one of those type of ball games. And Northern Arizona, when you watch them get off the bus, I saw them in Bozeman last year when they went to play Montana State. And like I said, my buddy Rudy Griffin was the defensive line coach for them. So I'm in their hotel and I'm watching them kind of get warmed up outside. And I thought I was watching the Green Bay Packers, y'all. I mean, they have some large individuals. That's a big football team like yours is or like NDSU's is. Now, the guys aren't as good, but the size is there. So sure. I wonder if Abilene Christian just won't have the big guys enough to be able to match up with that Lumberjack group. We'll see. That's what I'm watching right up front, and we'll know that pretty early, right? Yep. If Northern Arizona is able to run and be physical and Abilene Christian doesn't have any answer for it, it'll be a long day for them.
Yep. I think this is going to be a repeat of this last week. The Jacks win, the Jacks win, the Jacks win. And I look for the Northern Arizona Lumberjacks to be going up north to the Fargo Dome, but they're used to domes, right? The only thing is, I think they're used to a little more elevation than they're going to get in Fargo.
And also, I don't know, man, Arizona and peyote and stuff like that. I mean, you don't even have to take anything to think you're tripping in the Sky Dome. Yeah, I mean, you just look up and you're like, wow, man, football is cool.
Does either team have a chance against NDSU and stopping that offense?
No. Nope. No.
All right. Well, thank you, Kevin, for going through the bracket with us. Last year we did some Kevin-isms that were really popular that got people fired up, excited. This year we picked out some different Southern idioms for you. We have 5 of them here. And so just whatever you think here, and if you want to explain it, you can. You don't have to.
Okay.
All right. So here we go. The first one I found. Which team is going to knock their opponents into the middle of next week, looking both ways to Sunday?
I mean, that wasn't very well delivered, Matt. I mean, I'm not sure I would have put those together, right? But I would think that would have to be who's playing Drake and Central Connecticut State again, right? I'd be those. It'd be those two. Sorry, Ray, Debbie. Sorry about that. Sorry.
All right.
Bless my own heart to keep that. Bless my own heart.
Bless your own heart there. Okay. Okay, so this one's kind of mean now that I think about it. I shouldn't have said this one for you. But which at-large team is as worthless as gum on a boot heel?
Boy, man, I'll tell you, I'm not going to be welcome in some people's press room ever again after tonight. Central Connecticut State, so I just they're not going to play like they did last week again, I don't think. And yeah, that
Yeah,
or
we can leave it
I've
at
heard
that.
I've
The
heard
Grizzlies, Ron.
something you step on a sidewalk in a gutter in New Orleans in August. That type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Smells bad.
Yeah. All right. I don't know what this actually means, so you might have to explain it to me here.
Okay.
Which team in the bracket just dills your pickle?
I mean, that would be the South Dakota State Jackrabbits, man.
Hey, there we go.
I mean that.
Know your audience, I guess.
Just think of the connotation, man. That dills my pickle.
There we
So
go.
yeah, you gotta. Yeah. I mean, what have I always said? That distinguished citizen of the state of North Carolina says that to be the man, you got to beat the man. Well,
Yep.
until somebody does in the playoffs, y'all are the man.
Yeah, so you like that matchup going forward this year. I know a lot of us said, at least on the JI team, that we thought this was the year where we lose one in the Fargo Dome. Excuse me, and much like they did to us for years and years, get them in the playoffs. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, that would be just like the balancing out of the yin and the yang, the Tai and the chi, the rebel and the yell. That would be all of those things.
Of course.
So that, yeah, I could see that, and y'all could just give them the good old what for, right? Nice rock. We'll take the ring, right?
There we
So
go.
We've heard that for far too long. So.
But turnabout being fair play and all,
There you go.
what would y'all rather have? And if the answer can't be both.
Well, we know it's not the Rock versus the ring for sure.
I mean, there you go.
All right, Matt.
All right. So we got two questions. This is about the whole bracket when we're thinking about the bracket here. So who should be grinning like a possum eating a sweet potato about their draw in the bracket?
Well, I would think that would have to be Incarnate Word myself, right? I mean, you look at, the 6 seed and look at the 7 seed and what they would have to go through, right? So I would think Incarnate Word would look at this thing and go, wow, it's set up for us pretty nicely. And everybody else is going to have a dogfight, man. And so will Incarnate Word. Every one of these teams is pretty good. There are some great teams in this, but every team that's not from the NEC or the Pioneer League are here for a reason, right? And I got asked on another show, I think it was in Vegas. They only have me and run our show there because degenerate gamblers can bet on the games. It's not my winning personality that leads ESPN Las Vegas to run our show. It's that there's 60 more games guys who shake when they're not betting can bet on every Saturday. I just think that is there's a reason why these teams were on the bubble. He said, which one of them is dangerous? And I said, well, really none of them, or they wouldn't be there, right?
Yeah, I saw it. That was good. Yeah. All right, final question for you, and this is a fan favorite. What team should be redder than the Devil's Dangler about their draw in the bracket?
In the first round?
No, just
draw
the
whole path.
Yeah, the whole.
I look at Montana State and I think, that is a squad that I would really have liked for them to maybe play Montana again, right? I would really, really enjoy that. But, I really think Idaho has a shot to make some noise, y'all. And I know that some people are going to disagree with me on that, and that's fine. But I don't really think it matters all that much who's on the other side of them. I like Idaho's chances to go further than some people think they're going to go. And that was one of the teams I probably would have flip-flopped, right, in the seeding if I was the committee and gave them, maybe the 6 seed and maybe put Incarnate Word at 8, right, if I was going to seed Incarnate Word at all. But I really like Idaho in this whole thing, not to win the championship, but to be a team that we're going to look back and talk about in Frisco going, that squad was dangerous. They did some things. And I'll tell you one reason why I think that is that by sheer necessity, they've had to develop depth at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
By sheer necessity. There are a lot of teams in this bracket that if their starting quarterback goes down, they're in a heap of trouble, right?
Yeah.
And
Half of them at
Idaho's,
least.
half of them at least. And Idaho is in a situation where if Jack Lane gets hurt, well, the guy they bring in has at least played some meaningful snaps, and isn't going to vomit on the turf by having to be out there. So I like the Vandals, and I think that Idaho is going to be somebody we're going to talk about in Frisco going, that was a better team than people thought they were.
I agree with you, Kevin. Idaho is kind of my dark horse too, because just look what they did the first game of the year, right?
Right.
And the fact that Jack Lane ended up out of that game might have been the difference maker. They dang near could have beat them, or dang near did beat them. And are they going to? That team's going to be in the playoffs, right?
Right.
That's nothing to sneeze at. That's a salty Oregon team that they gave everything they could have wanted to. Oregon was not laying down and just letting them have it. They were giving them everything they had, and they were coming up short quite often. So,
and there'll be some people who will get this reference, and some people who won't because y'all are too young. But if they do have to play Jack Wagner, well, that might be all I need to get by. So y'all got no idea. Hit your Google when the show's over. Jack Wagner, all I need, and you'll understand why I said that.
Sounds good.
Somebody in the comments is going to know what I'm talking about. I
Maybe
hope.
Jim Papa. We always
that seems like a Jim or a Seth thing. Yeah.
And to whoever and to Ben, I am not geriatric, Ben. All right. I've still got a little ways to go to get there. So
I don't know. I'd take Ben over you in a wrestling match.
Well, of course. The guy has no shame. He showed up to Frisco in a hot dog suit, man. You don't wrestle a guy like that. You don't wrestle a guy who's got no shame.
He lost a bet. That's why that happened.
Well, you know what? I think he would have done it anyway.
Maybe.
But maybe. But I better be careful considering that I'm talking about the future mayor. I gotta be careful. I don't want to end up in a van, with a black bag over my head.
That's awesome. Oh man. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for giving us your insight tonight. Man, this was awesome again. Hopefully we can continue to make this an annual tradition, because what you bring to the table and your knowledge is really awesome. The show that you and Stone do every week, we love to give Stone shit and banter back and forth with him, as we have since he was a player. But you guys do some of the best work out there. So thanks for all you do for this level of football.
Yeah. I appreciate that a lot, Matt. And I'm envious of y'all and other people who do what y'all do. Stone and I we are slaves to a show clock because it's a radio show. I can't sit down. The things that we talk about on the phone during the week are way better than what we send to 80 stations across the country every week. It just is. But, we got to cover it all, like we say, and we, can't cover it in the depth that we'd like to. But it's really cool that y'all are able to do what you do and, go into depth and, talk about things that aren't just bang, bang, boom, you're done, move on to the next one. So I'm envious of y'all, and I look forward to this, and I look forward to this next year. And like I said to you, Matt, anytime y'all need me for anything, the answer is always yes.
Hey.
And just a reminder to everybody again, until midnight tonight, if you go to FCSNationRadio.com, Alex's Lemonade Stand, top right-hand corner, find Mark Ranowski, or if you're just a random FCS person who stumbled across this, whoever you want to donate to, matching funds double for anybody who's not in the Shinkle network and triple for them. So we'd appreciate it. 1 hour of research is $50 for pediatric cancer. If you donate $50 and get an hour worth of research, well, today that becomes 2 hours. Or if you're in the Schenkel Network, that becomes 3 hours. And our goal through doing this is to end childhood cancer in our time. It not be something that we talk about, our kids talk about 15, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. We want to end it in our time. And with everybody's help, we're going to do that. And I'm quite confident. So thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. Chad, love you guys. Matt,
Yeah, we love having you on.
I missed Dallas today. I'm sorry that that Clarkson isn't on here. I really am, because when I make comments, when I'm watching your show, I can tell when he reads one, because that guy does not hide when he's tickled very well.
No, he does not.
But I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
People can tell when I'm reading comments that are funny too. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Well, here's what you do when you're reading comments, period, Chad. You go like this.
Hey, I got a 50-inch screen now. Nobody's commenting on my squinting in the last 6-8 weeks. So
Okay, all right.
we're doing a little bigger.
That's
it's like
good.
840 resolution, half-inch letters, so I can read it.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Make sure you hit up Alex's Lemonade, folks. Give that money to that worthy cause. We're doing the best that we can out here to try and raise money, and could sure use a little extra help. So might as well make it worth 3 times as much or double as much, depending on who you put in for.
Yep. All right. Thank you again, Kevin. Thank you to our sponsors. See you guys all in 2 weeks in Brookings, roughly under 2 weeks now. So with that, go big, go blue,
Go blue,
Go
go Jags.